Hello, Tanse, and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. We start tonight in Alberta, where two more people were found guilty Friday in an Edmonton courtroom in the death of 25-year-old Nature Duperon. Duperon was kidnapped, fed drugs, and left to die off an Alberta highway. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
On Friday, Buddy Underwood was found guilty of second-degree murder, forcible confinement, kidnapping, and robbery for his role in the death of Nature Duperon. Tyra Muskego was also found guilty of manslaughter, forcible confinement, and robbery. In April of 2019, Nature Duperon was kidnapped in Edmonton, beaten, handcuffed, and driven 3 hours west. She was force-fed and injected with fentanyl. She was taken to a wooded area near Hinton, Alberta, and left to die. Her body was found 2 weeks later. In September, Kayla Bezus and Grayson Eshepi both pled guilty to second-degree murder for their role in Nature Duperon's death. Her mother spoke to APTN and says all four should have been convicted of first-degree murder.
They could have just left it as is, but they continue to torture her all the way to Hinton and past Hinton, when they made how many stops, and they all had time to be able to stop with what they were doing. They could have helped her. They could have phoned 911. They could have said something at the gas stations or the Tim Hortons or McDonald's. They could have did something, but each one of them were all there, and they all followed through with their plan.
Underwood and Muskego will be sentenced on December 2nd. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
In southern Alberta, the family of a Blackfoot woman is grieving after her remains were found in Lethbridge County. 34-year-old Tia Blood was reported missing earlier this month. Her body was located in a rural area near Lethbridge, Monday evening. Following an autopsy, RCMP said the manner of death is inconclusive and remains under investigation. In connection to that investigation, Hunter Frank of Lethbridge has been arrested and charged with indignity to human remains and 2 counts of theft. Family members took to social media to say Blood was a shining light and will be missed. They ask for privacy. She was wife and mother of 2. A Manitoba MLA has proposed a new bill to add a specialty license plate in order to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people. Point Douglas MLA Bernadette Smith proposed a private member's bill seeking support to amend the Drivers and Vehicles Act. Manitoba drivers could choose 2 different license plate designs honoring MMIWG2S and raise money for the families. Proceeds from the license plates will go towards a charity for the benefit of MMIWG2S family members. Smith's sister, Claudette Osborne-Tayo, went missing in 2008. This week, the bill passed second reading, with a few more steps needed before becoming official.
Resoundingly that I spoke to, resoundingly I hear from families that they feel like their loved ones have been forgotten, that they feel like people aren't connected to the issue, and that there's not enough awareness being raised around this issue. So this would be a way for us in this House, as leaders in this province, to stand with those families, to help those families feel like they're not alone. But not only us in this House, but Manitobans.
An apology ceremony for a First Nations family wrongfully detained by the Vancouver Police Department was cancelled after officers involved in the incident did not attend. Hailsick Nation says the officers not attending is an example of the police department's lack of respect for Indigenous culture. APTN's Lee Wilson has more.
Today we were hoping to be joined by the constables that were involved in the handcuffing incident with Max and his family.
Chief Marilyn Slett of the Hailsick Nation expresses disappointment that VPD officers involved in the wrongful detaining of 2 band members at a BMO in Vancouver in 2019 were not in attendance at an apology ceremony at their big house in Bella Bella. The ceremony was cancelled when the officers did not show. It was part of a human rights settlement on behalf of Maxwell Johnson and his 12-year-old granddaughter. Johnson says the healing cannot move ahead without those officers.
It's very disheartening to get the news that the two officers can't be here without any explanation, and we can't go full circle with our healing now because they chose not to show up.
Vancouver Police Department leaders were in attendance in Bella Bella for the scheduled apology ceremony. An uplifting ceremony for Johnson was held instead. The community members and officers who attended shared a meal. On behalf of the Vancouver Police Board, Vice Chair Faye Whiteman apologized to Maxwell Johnson and his granddaughter.
The board does apologize for the lasting pain and trauma that Mr. Johnson, Tori Ann, and their loved ones and this community has experienced as a result of this incident. I'm a grandparent myself of a 13-year-old, and I can tell you that I cannot imagine the pain of seeing my granddaughter handcuffed.
APTN News contacted VPD and VPD board for a comment, but did not receive a response before airtime. The Helsik Nation says they had discussions with VPD and wrote letters to express the importance of the apology ceremony, and added the two officers were publicly invited. Chief Slett says the no-show by officers shows the Vancouver Police Department's lack of respect for Indigenous culture and traditions.
When a colonial institution seeks to reconcile and to begin reconciliation together, it is a prerequisite that they show respect for our customs and engage directly with our communities.
The Helsik Nation says they are seeking to reset their relationship with police and hope the officers apologize to bring closure to Maxwell Johnson and his family. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
All right, it's time for a short break, but stick around. We will have plenty more news when we come back. Welcome back. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has rejected the federal government's $20 billion child welfare settlement with the Assembly of First Nations. With reaction from the Assembly of First Nations and First Nations leaders in Manitoba, here's that story. The CHRT has stated that the deal did not fully satisfy its orders, as it reduced the amount for some children, left others out completely, and did not guarantee the $40,000 in compensation for each child and caregiver. Assembly First Nations Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse has been leading the way for the AFN in this case and expressed her disappointment with the ruling.
Today we learned sadly that this settlement agreement has not been approved. I'm deeply frustrated. It's a sad day for the many First Nations families learning today that their long wait for compensation and acknowledgement is going to continue. I don't know when or if compensation will flow to these kids and families at this stage. We had come so close to compensation finally reaching our people, and today's ruling is a significant setback.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Acting Grand Chief Cornell McLean called out Cindy Blackstock, Executive Director for the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society.
We speak about every child matters. In Cindy Blackstock's eyes, no child matters. You know, it seems that they're listening to whatever she has to say in terms of how this compensation moves forward. It doesn't seem in her eyes that it's good enough. You know, I'm hoping that this is fixed in a short period and not years down the road.
Grand Chief Garrison Satie of the Manitoba Kiiwetinoong Ogamaganak also had strong words against the decision.
This is another act that's re-victimizing these children, waiting for a compensation that is rightly due unto them. And for them to have that hope of receiving that compensation with great expectation, and only for that to be snatched from them, is cruel. It is inhumane.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg. And we caught up with the Acting Grand Chief Cornell McLean at the time about the comments he made earlier this week regarding Cindy Blackstock and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision. Late last year, the Trudeau government announced the $20 billion compensation package to First Nations children and families shortchanged by a chronically underfunded child welfare system. The CHRT said it's not enough, and the current agreement does not guarantee all victims will receive $40,000 in compensation and reduces this amount for others. McLean said, a quote, "In Cindy Blackstock's eyes, no child matters," and we asked him if he regretted saying that. Here's what he had to say.
You know, I guess the thing is that what's her motivation behind it? You know, is she looking for more of a bigger or better compensation deal for the First Nation kids? Because, you know, I think right now the kids have been waiting, you know, the young adults and families have been waiting, you know, for the last year since this agreement, you know, has been worked on, and it's been announced, and that, you know, they want to get their hands on some kind of dollars.
And the ruling was a major setback for the federal government on its financial package to compensate First Nations children and their families. APTN's Fraser Needham has this report from Ottawa.
Late last year, the Trudeau government announced a $20 billion compensation package to First Nations children and families shortchanged by a chronically underfunded child welfare system between 2006 and 2022. But in a letter issued Monday, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal says it's not enough. And outside the House of Commons today, Justice Minister David Lametti appeared caught off guard by the CHRT's latest decision.
Look, I think what next is we wait for the final decision. This was just a summary today. Obviously, we work with AFN. We work with the Caring Society. We work with NAN and all the other partners with whom we were working. As Minister Haidu pointed out, this was very much an Indigenous-driven and Indigenous-led process and settlement.
The 15-page CHRT letter says the current agreement does not guarantee all victims will receive $40,000 in compensation and reduces this amount for others. Asked repeatedly if he would reopen the deal, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller appeared to show no appetite for doing so.
This is much greater than the CHRT decision in itself, and there are some things that the CHRT just cannot do to make sure children are safe in this country. If you look simply at the compensation numbers, the CHRT can only ever accord over $40,000 and under. We presented a package, and we stood on New Year's Eve of this past year working late to make sure that we had a comprehensive package that covered a lot of class areas and a lot of categories of children that they may have thought they would have been included in the CHRT order. They were in fact not.
Minister of Indigenous Services Canada Patty Haidu said it was disappointing that an Indigenous-led design hadn't been accepted by the CHRT.
There is a continued commitment to First Nations to make sure that we satisfy both aspects of these historic agreements, by the way, and agreements that our First Nations partners have worked incredibly hard on arriving at. So we'll wait to see the details from the tribunal, but we'll continue to work with First Nations partners on both aspects, the compensation piece and on the reforming the system.
Aside from the $20 billion in compensation for First Nations children and families, the Trudeau government has committed another $20 billion to fixing the First Nations child welfare system. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And while all of this was going on, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs elected a new leader this week and the first woman ever to lead the Assembly. Sav Jonesa has this.
It was a historical by-election for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs yesterday. 59 chiefs from First Nations throughout Manitoba voted for their new Grand Chief. Just 2 of the 7 candidates made it after 2 rounds of voting. Kathy Merritt came through with the 50% plus 1 majority vote, as required by the rules. She is the first woman elected since the Assembly's inception in 1988.
Everyone in attendance, I'd like to welcome your new Grand Chief, Kathy Merritt.
We're all making history today. We should be all proud that I am the first woman chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. I will work hard for our people. I will work hard for the small communities that think that they don't have a voice. I will work hard for our nations to be represented in the Assembly.
Grand Chief Kathy Merrick will succeed AMC's former Grand Chief, Arlene Dumas, who was removed due to harassment and sexual assault allegations. We met up with Grand Chief Kathy Merrick after she was sworn in.
It's so exciting to be given a mandate from the chiefs, 37 chiefs believing in me to take our organization, our Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs to places, to do all that good work with them. I work for them, but they gave me that mandate to do that for them. So I'm going to correct a lot of things in a good way, in a good heart, because I'm going there on behalf of the children, on behalf of women, on behalf of our men and our youth.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
It was a somewhat symbolic day in the House of Commons on Thursday. NDP MP Leah Gazan reintroduced a motion to recognize what happened in Canada's residential school system as an act of genocide. Gazan had introduced the same motion last year, but back then it failed to pass. But Thursday afternoon it was passed unanimously.
That in the opinion of the House that the government must recognize what happened in Canada's Indian residential schools as genocide as acknowledged by Pope Francis and in accordance with Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried.
All right, time for one final break, but still ahead, a story about a mysterious creature in the north. Welcome back. The Imaginative Film and Media Arts Festival was held in Toronto last weekend. 14 awards were handed out with prizes totaling $60,000. Actor and musician Gary Farmer was also honored with a special award. Steve Mongeau has more.
For more than 20 years, the Imaginative Film and Media Arts Festival has been working to inspire and connect communities through original Indigenous film and media arts produced by Canadian and international Indigenous artists. This year, actor and musician Gary Farmer received the August Schillenberg Award of Excellence presented to an actor based on the longevity and impact of their careers, professionalism, and involvement in mentorship and community work.
It's just an honor to come back to you all, and of course all those memories from Aboriginal Voices Radio, which is probably a better idea than it was 20 years ago now. So make sure you young people hold that language up. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, they'll take our Indianness away.
Farmer was honored to receive.
I think, well, Augie Schellenberg, he was an actor, and I knew Augie when he was a younger man, and admired his work here in Canada and the U.S. of course for a long time. And it's an honor to be here among all the Native people here.
Farmer's first acting role was in 1975, and he is still busy today, with recent credits on shows such as Dead Man, Resident Alien, and Reservation Dogs.
Gary Farmer, he's like really a trailblazer. He's a legend. He's from my reserve, which was kind of nice. Had nothing in the decision-making swaying or anything, but yeah, he's a very talented actor, and it's just a matter of time. So it's Gary's turn this year.
With the demand and more acceptance of Indigenous-produced shows, Farmer had this to say to young people entering the business and keeping their language alive.
Oh, you know, the world's full of media now. It's a totally different environment than what I was born into, and you know, as long as we can maintain our culture and languages, I think we'll be okay. That should be the priority for any young person coming into the business.
The night ended with a song from Farmer, along with Derek Miller. Steve Monjo, APTN National News, Toronto.
It's big, it's hairy, and no, it's not your uncle. If you're lucky enough, you might just spot one in the Yukon. While no one has ever proven the existence of the mysterious creature, a Sasquatch investigator in Whitehorse has compiled a new book of sightings and encounters. Our reporter Sarah Connors has that story.
Here we are. Hope he enjoys it.
He has been intrigued with Sasquatches since a little boy, so thank you.
The elusive Sasquatch has intrigued Red Grossinger for over 20 years, so much so that he's compiled a book about it. The retired Canadian Army officer's interest was sparked after spotting a tall, two-legged creature while fishing on the Dakini River in 1997.
It looked strange to me, so I mentioned that to one of my friends from the Teslin-Claggett Nation, and the lady mentioned quite clearly, well, that's a Sasquatch, a wild man. And this one depicts a Sasquatch sighting on the Magundi River.
Since then, Grossinger has investigated numerous Sasquatch sightings in the Yukon and northern BC. Many of those reports have been compiled into his new book on Nagani, the Dene word for Sasquatch. Grossinger says one of the most puzzling encounters took place in a Whitehorse neighborhood.
He became somewhat translucent, and gradually he became transparent. He said at one time he could see the outline. We could see right through, see the bush behind.
That still gives me goosebumps when I think about this and talk about that story.
Another of those reports comes from Grant Pauls. The Tahltan Nation member claims he saw two Sasquatch near this area outside of Ross River, Yukon.
What kind of shook me is the sheer size of the width of the shoulders. Probably talking like 4 to 5 feet wide. And I didn't want to stick around and find out anymore, so I jumped in my truck and raced off.
Paul says he's sharing his story so people are aware.
I don't know if they would harm you or not, but it is very disturbing, so I thought that was important to just share.
And this one here, for example, that's the one that I mentioned downstairs at Harker Neil Crestview.
But unlike Paul's, Grossinger says most First Nations people in the territory have been reluctant to speak on the matter.
But they know a lot more than we do.
As for proving Sasquatch's existence, Grossinger says bones or a body could help solve the mystery. Until then, he'll leave it to his readers to decide if they believe in the legend of Nagani or not.
I'm not trying to convince anybody at all. I'm presenting what it is, and that's it. If you want to believe it, okay. If not, too bad.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
All right, that's all we have for you on this edition of APTN National News Weekend. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us, Miigwech, and have a great weekend.